Sometimes, the hardest battles are fought not outside, but within a family. This is the story of Layla, a woman rejected by her own father, only to inherit his empire after his death. But with that inheritance comes a choice. Keep the legacy of pain, or fight to change it all. If you want to follow Layla's journey of strength, justice, and redemption, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss a single part. The bell above the diner door jingled for the third time that morning, and Layla barely looked up. She balanced 2 plates in her hands, weaving between the booths with practiced ease. Scrambled eggs, black coffee, tired truckers, and the buzz of an old neon sign outside. That was her world now. The town was small, quiet, and slow. People smiled, but mostly kept their distance. No one asked too many questions, just enough to keep up appearances. And that suited Layla just fine. She wiped down a counter, pausing only when her eyes flicked to the clock. Almost noon. She had another shift at the grocery store later. Rent was due soon. Layla called her boss from the back. "Phone's for you." She frowned. Nobody called her at work. Nobody really called her at all. She picked up the phone, tucking it under her chin. "Yeah." A deep, calm voice answered. "Miss Bennett." She straightened. No one called her that either. Not since she left New York. "Yes. Who's this?" "My name is Charles Whitmore. I was your father's personal assistant." Her throat tightened at the word father. "I'm calling with some difficult news," he said gently. "Your father passed away early this morning." Silence. Layla blinked once. Then again. She hadn't spoken to him in almost 6 years. Since the day he looked her in the eye and said she was a disgrace to the family name. That she didn't fit. "I thought you should know," Charles continued. "And he left instructions for me to retrieve you. He wanted you at the funeral." Layla let out a slow breath. "He wanted me there? That's rich. There's also a formal reading of the will. You're named in it." She didn't answer right away. Her free hand gripped the edge of the counter. "I'll come by tomorrow morning," he said, gently. "You'll need something appropriate to wear. I'll handle it." Layla hung up without saying goodbye. She stared at the receiver for a long time, her mind racing. Her coworkers whispered, but she didn't hear them. Her father, billionaire real estate mogul Raymond Bennett, was dead. And for some reason, now that he was gone, he wanted her back. Charles arrived exactly at 9 a.m., just as he had said. The black Mercedes glistened on the edge of the dusty road like something dropped from another world. Layla stood outside her small apartment with a duffel bag at her feet and a guarded look on her face. Charles stepped out, dressed in a sleek gray suit, and handed her a garment bag with care. "This is the dress," he said. "Your father selected it himself. A month ago." Layla hesitated, then took it silently. The drive into the city felt like crossing into another life. The skyline of New York eventually came into view, tall, cold, familiar. She hadn't seen it in 6 years, and it hadn't missed her. Raymond Bennett's funeral was held in a private wing of a cemetery known for burying people with names on buildings. White roses were everywhere, lined up perfectly. People stood in silence, wearing sleek black coats and designer sunglasses. It was staged, elegant, impersonal, just like her father. When Layla walked in, the atmosphere changed. Heads turned, eyes narrowed. The quiet buzz of whispers swept through the crowd like a sudden wind. What is she doing here? She was exiled, literally disowned. She's just here for the will. Layla stood tall, ignoring them. One woman, older, polished, dripping with diamonds, made no effort to hide her contempt. After all these years, she shows up now? For what? A piece of the pie. Layla turned to her, calm but sharp. "I came to say goodbye to my father," she said. "Not to fight over his money. Unlike the rest of you." The woman blinked, stunned into silence. Later, in a wood-paneled room overlooking the city, the family gathered for the reading of the will. Some sat smugly, others impatient. They all expected the same thing, a division of wealth, a token gift for Layla, maybe nothing at all. The lawyer, an older man with a grave expression, opened a sealed envelope. "I will now read a personal letter from Mr. Raymond Bennett, attached to his final will and testament." He began, "To my family, you may wonder why I exiled my only daughter from my life. The truth is simple. I feared that if she stayed, she would become like the rest of you. I loved her too much to allow that. She was the only one who saw the rot in what we built. And so I gave her freedom. To Layla, my daughter, the one who walked away instead of selling her soul, I leave everything. The company, the real estate, the assets. All of it. Use it wisely, or burn it down. It's yours now. The room went dead silent. A crystal glass dropped and shattered on the floor. Someone gasped. Layla didn't speak. She just sat still, back straight, her hands in her lap. Her father, cold, harsh, controlling, had given her everything in the end. Not out of guilt, not out of pity, but because she had been the only one with the courage to leave. And now, without asking for it, she had inherited an empire. Layla sat in stunned silence. The words of her father's were still echoing in her head like a slow-moving storm. Use it wisely, or burn it down. It's yours now. Across the room, her relatives erupted. What the hell is this? She's been gone for years. This must be a mistake. There has to be another version. She didn't even care about him. The lawyer raised a calm hand. The will is legal, final, and witnessed. I advise you all to remain respectful. Charles stood beside Layla, composed as ever. He leaned slightly toward her and whispered, "We can leave whenever you're ready." Layla didn't answer immediately. Her hands rested on her knees, her expression unreadable. Inside, her thoughts were unraveling faster than she could contain them. She hadn't seen this coming. Not the will, not the inheritance, not the fury that now turned every pair of eyes toward her like knives. Her cousin Jerome stormed across the room, pointing at her with trembling hands. "You abandoned this family. You left, and now you want to take everything." Layla stood. "I didn't leave," she said evenly. "I was pushed out. You all remember that." "You couldn't handle the pressure," someone muttered. "No," Layla snapped, her voice rising. "I couldn't handle the lies. The way you all smiled in public and devoured each other in private. I was tired of pretending." The room fell quiet again, and she let the silence hang. Then she turned and walked out. Charles followed her to the waiting car. Outside, the sky had darkened, rain threatened in the clouds. "Where to now?" the driver asked. Layla looked down at the garment bag folded over her arm. Her father's final gift. She exhaled, long and slow. "I don't know," she murmured. "I don't even know what this means." Charles glanced at her, then said softly, "You'll want to see the house, the office, the estate holdings. The board will want to meet you." She shook her head. "Let them wait." He didn't press. They drove in silence through the glittering towers of New York. The city looked different now, not because of anything she had done, but because of what was suddenly hers. Power, legacy, all of it, forced into her hands by a man who'd exiled her for having a heart. Back in her hotel suite, Layla stood in front of the mirror. She slowly peeled off the black dress and laid it carefully on the bed. It felt like removing a costume, something not truly hers. She looked at herself. No makeup, no pretense. Just the woman who'd waited tables for 6 years, and the daughter her father had once banished. She whispered, "What am I supposed to do with all this?" No one answered. And yet, deep inside, something shifted. Something opened. She didn't know how or when, but she would find a way to make it her own. On her terms. For the first time, and maybe the last, she held the pen. 3 days after the funeral, Layla sat in a towering glass building she hadn't entered in nearly a decade, her father's corporate headquarters. The elevator opened to the 47th floor with a soft ding, revealing a gleaming hallway lined with mahogany and cold stairs. Charles walked slightly behind her, as he always did, offering support without pressure. He had arranged the meeting with the company's board, a room full of men and women who had worked under her father, feared him, and now resented that the girl he'd disowned was their new boss. Layla adjusted the cuffs of her plain black blazer. It wasn't designer. It wasn't tailored. But it was hers. Just like everything else now. Inside the boardroom, 12 people sat around a massive oval table. Some offered tight, professional smiles. Others didn't bother. "Miss Bennett," said a woman with perfect posture and silver hair. "Thank you for making the time. We know this is sudden." Layla nodded. "You can call me Layla." Silence followed. A man on the far end cleared his throat and launched in. "To be transparent, your father never included you in any operations. You have no experience with the company. And there are concerns from shareholders about stability, control, direction. You think I'm a liability," she said flatly. Several looked uncomfortable. Others, relieved she'd said it first. "I worked 2 jobs for 6 years," she said calmly. "I managed shifts, budgets, inventory, and people who didn't respect me. It wasn't this kind of power, but it was real work. So let's skip the condescension. Charles smiled behind her, just a little. The board stared. Layla continued, her voice steady. I'm not here to pretend I have all the answers. But I'm not walking away. If you're waiting for me to sign it all over or disappear quietly, don't hold your breath. One of the younger board members, a black woman in her 30s with sharp eyes, finally nodded. Good. Then let's start by reviewing the status of the real estate division. It's where most of the PR fallout's coming from. Layla blinked. Fallout. The woman slid a folder across the table. Your father was ruthless. He pushed people out of neighborhoods, bought politicians, threatened communities. We've kept it buried, but now that he's gone. The others shifted, uneasy. Layla opened the folder slowly. Inside were photos, internal memos, legal threats. Families evicted. Protests silenced. She stared at them, nausea crawling into her throat. How long has this been going on? She whispered. Years. And you were all complicit. Nobody answered. Layla stood. This isn't just about me proving myself. This is about cleaning up what he left behind. Another man muttered. You burn this down, and you take us with it. Layla stared at him. Then maybe you shouldn't have helped build it that way. She walked out without waiting for a dismissal. Back in the elevator, Charles didn't say a word. When the doors closed, Layla exhaled. They hate me, she murmured. They hate what you represent, Charles replied. That doesn't make you wrong. Layla looked out over the city as the elevator descended. She had inherited a kingdom, but it was rotting at the core. Now she had to choose, protect it or tear it apart. That night, Layla sat alone in her hotel suite, the city sprawling beneath her windows like a restless ocean. The folder the board had given her lay open on the table. The photos, the documents, the signatures, all real, all legal, all horrifying. She thought of the neighborhoods she used to visit as a child, holding her father's hand. Back then, she believed he was building something good. Creating value, he used to say. She had no idea that meant evicting families, manipulating courts, and covering it all up with glossy PR. A knock at the door broke her thoughts. She opened it to find the young board member from earlier, the black woman with the sharp eyes. I know it's late, she said. Can we talk? Layla let her in without a word. I'm Simone Harris, the woman said, setting down her bag. Cool. Your father recruited me 6 years ago. I stayed because I believed I could change things from within. Layla raised an eyebrow. And did you? Simone sighed. Not much. He shut down anything that slowed profit. But I kept records. Witnessed things. Quietly tried to protect people where I could. It wasn't enough. Layla watched her carefully. Why are you telling me this now? Because you're not him, Simone said. And because this place is going to eat you alive unless you know exactly what you're walking into. Layla walked to the window. They want me gone. They want control back. And if you let them push you out, they'll bury all of this and go on like nothing ever happened. Layla looked back at her. And if I stay? Simone's face was firm. Then you fight. Layla sat down slowly. If I tear down everything he built, I'm the villain. If I pretend none of this happened, I'm a fraud. Simone nodded. Welcome to power. There was silence between them for a moment. Not uncomfortable, just heavy. Layla reached for the folder again. What would you do if it were you? Simone didn't hesitate. I'd clean house. Replace people. Set new rules. And I'd start with the worst of them. The ones who signed off on forced evictions, intimidation tactics, blackmail. Make it public. Make it real. Layla took a deep breath. Her voice was quieter now. My father, he banished me because I didn't fit into this world. Simone met her eyes. Then changed the world. The next morning, Layla stood before the mirror in a sharply cut navy suit, borrowed from Simone. It wasn't expensive, but it fit like armor. Her curls were pulled back, her lips bare. She didn't look like the girl from the diner anymore, nor the outcast standing at a funeral. She looked like a woman preparing for war. She and Simone entered the headquarters together. People stared as they walked through the marble lobby, but this time Layla held her head higher. The board had called an emergency meeting, hoping, perhaps, that she'd backpedal or hand off control. But she had her own agenda. When she entered the boardroom, she placed a thick folder on the table. What's this? Muttered one man. Everything Simone and I found, Layla said, her voice calm but clear. Eviction records, falsified documents, threats to city inspectors. I'm turning it all over to the Internal Ethics Committee. And to the press. Gasps. You'd destroy your father's legacy? one woman snapped. No, Layla replied. He already did that. I'm salvaging what's left. Another board member, one who had laughed at her during the funeral, stood up, livid. You don't know what you're doing. This company will collapse. Layla didn't flinch. Then let it collapse. If it can't survive without corruption, it doesn't deserve to. The room erupted. People shouted. Some threatened legal action. Others stormed out. But Simone stood beside her, silent and unshaken. When the dust settled, only a few board members remained, quiet, watching. One of them, a tired-looking man in his 60s, finally spoke. You sound like your mother. Layla blinked. You knew her? He nodded. She believed in doing things the right way. That's why your father hated it. Layla's chest tightened. She died when I was young. No one ever talked about her. She was the last person who tried to change him, he said. And he pushed her out, too. Layla lowered her gaze for a moment, then looked up again. Well, this time, someone's staying. That evening, she stood on the rooftop of the building alone. The city stretched endlessly before her, glittering, deafening, full of ghosts and noise. Her phone buzzed. A message from Charles. You just made enemies. But also something better, a beginning. Layla exhaled and typed back. Let them come. She turned toward the wind and let it hit her full on. For the first time, she didn't feel like she was standing in her father's shadow. She was standing in her own light. The story broke within 24 hours. Headlines flooded business networks and social media feeds. Heiress exposes corruption in late father's empire. Daughter of real estate tycoon to overhaul billion-dollar company. From outcast to CEO, Layla Bennett takes a stand. Some praised her as a hero. Others labeled her reckless. The company's stock dipped sharply in the first day of coverage. Analysts screamed about instability, board members resigned, and whispers of lawsuits began to circle. But behind the chaos, something else started happening. Emails from employees. Messages from people in neighborhoods her father's company once displaced. Letters, handwritten, from mothers, students, even janitors, thanking her for speaking out. My family lost our home because of your father. You're the first person who cared. You're not like them. Keep going. I thought no one with power would ever do the right thing. They filled a folder on her desk. She read every single one. Simone leaned against the office door one afternoon, watching her. You okay? She asked. Layla nodded slowly. I think so. I'm still figuring out what comes next. Simone smiled. You know, your father never let us redesign the affordable housing division. Said it wasn't worth the return. Layla turned in her chair. Then that's where we start. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Layla launched a full audit of the company's community impact. She replaced key executives with people who shared her vision. She met with city leaders to propose buyback programs for homes unfairly taken. She directed funds into public schools, local clinics, small business support. The media called it idealistic. Investors called it dangerous. She called it necessary. But power always attracts challenge. One evening, Charles knocked gently and stepped in. We received a cease and desist. From your cousin Jerome. Layla sighed. Of course we did. He's contesting the will. Claims your father wasn't of sound mind. That the company should belong to the capable hands of the family. Layla stared out the window, jaw tight. He wants control back. He's not alone, Charles said. A few of your aunts and uncles are backing him. They're painting you as emotional, unstable. Said you're letting guilt run a business. Layla let out a short laugh. Imagine that, having a conscience. But the truth was, it hurt. Not the legal threat. That was expected. What stung was how quickly they wanted to undo everything. I'm not letting them win, she said finally. If I have to fight them in court, I will. You won't be alone, Charles said. And not just because you're the legal heir. Because people believe in what you're doing. Later that night, Layla stood again on the rooftop, phone in hand. The city still sparkled, but it looked softer now. She opened her father's old contact list. Dozens of names. Donors. Politicians. Journalists. The same power structure he once controlled. And she began deleting them. One by one. She didn't need the world he built. She was building her own. The courtroom was packed. Reporters filled the benches, their pens scratching, eyes watching every twitch of Layla's face. Her cousin Jerome sat just across the aisle, flanked by 3 lawyers in sharp suits and 2 aunts who hadn't looked at Layla since the funeral. The argument was simple and cruel, that Raymond Bennett had been mentally unfit when he wrote his will, and that Layla had manipulated a dying man for power. Layla sat still, spine straight, eyes steady. She wore no makeup. Her lawyer, a calm, fierce woman named Kendra, stood beside her like steel. The judge entered, and the room silenced. As the proceedings began, Jerome's team launched their strategy. He disowned her, one attorney said. And suddenly, near death, he gives her everything? It's implausible, suspicious, motivated by emotion or coercion. They showed photos of Layla at work in the diner, tried to paint her as uneducated, unstable, undeserving. But Kendra stood, her voice slicing through the noise. Mr. Bennett disowned his daughter not for her failure, but for her refusal. She refused to play the game of money, of power, of silence. And in the end, that's exactly why he trusted her. She handed the judge a sealed envelope, Raymond's final personal note, one not yet shared publicly. The judge opened it, read it silently. Then he spoke, reading aloud. If my daughter is reading this, and if the world is watching, know this. I wronged her. I cast her out because she made me see what I didn't want to. In her absence, I found clarity. I want her to inherit not my wealth, but my guilt and my chance to do better. Let her try. The room fell quiet. Even Jerome looked shaken. The aunts looked away. The judge set the paper down, cleared his throat, and spoke plainly. There is no credible evidence of coercion, nor of cognitive decline. The will stands. This court rules in favor of Miss Layla Bennett. Relief washed over her. Not joy, not triumph, but a release of something she'd carried too long. Shame, rage, loss. Outside the courthouse, the press surged, but she didn't stop for cameras. Later that night, Layla found herself walking the empty halls of her father's penthouse, now hers. She hadn't visited it until now. It smelled like cold marble and time. In his office, she saw the frame still on the shelf, an old photo of the two of them when she was 8. Smiling, before she asked too many questions, before everything broke. She didn't cry. She simply whispered, "You could have said sorry while you were alive." Then she turned out the lights, walked to the window, and looked out over the city. It was hers now, but she finally understood. Power wasn't what you claimed. It was what you chose to do with it. Weeks passed. Layla didn't celebrate her courtroom victory. There were no champagne toasts, no press interviews in designer gowns. Instead, she rolled up her sleeves, figuratively and literally, and got to work. One by one, she met with every department head. No PR handlers, no assistants, no scripts. Just face-to-face conversations. She listened more than she spoke. Some feared her. Others tested her. A few tried to flatter her, but that never worked. "I'm not here to play pretend," she told one executive. "If you're part of what poisoned this company, you're done. If you're willing to rebuild, stay." Half of upper management resigned within the month. And Layla didn't stop there. She flew to neighborhoods her father's company had bulldozed. She stood in empty lots and condemned buildings. She spoke to families still paying inflated rents or living in shelters because of urban renewal programs meant to push them out. "I'm sorry," she said, "not just as a representative of the company, as the daughter of the man who did this. And I'm not going to fix it with words." She opened a fund to rebuild housing at cost. She hired back contractors who had been fired for speaking out. She invited local leaders into planning meetings. No closed doors. People called it performative. But Layla kept going. The board, now reshaped with new voices, including Simone, now officially CEO of operations, pushed back only when they feared collapse. "We're bleeding money," one member warned. "Then let it bleed," Layla answered. "Until we stop stealing from the people who made this city." Some allies grew impatient. They wanted faster results, better headlines. "You need to show strength," Charles once said. "I am," she replied. "This is what it looks like." Late one evening, she stood on the roof of a community center her father once tried to demolish. Kids ran below, laughing, playing basketball under the newly repaired lights. A local reporter approached her quietly. "Miss Bennett," she said, "do you consider yourself a reformer?" Layla thought for a moment, then said, "No, I consider myself a beginner. Someone cleaning up what never should have happened. The real heroes are the people who never had a voice and still stayed." The next day, a headline read, "She took down her father's empire and built something better." But Layla didn't read it. She was already on to the next neighborhood. Months later, Layla stood before a crowd gathered in a freshly renovated community center. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over faces of all ages. Families who once lived in fear of displacement, neighbors who had lost homes, children who now played safely. Simone stood beside her, along with several local leaders and residents who had become allies. Layla took a deep breath. This moment was more than a speech. It was a promise. 5 years ago, she began, my father built an empire on power and control. But he forgot one thing, that an empire isn't just buildings or money. It's people. She looked out at the crowd, seeing hope where once there was only despair. I inherited his wealth and his mistakes, but I choose to use what I have to repair those mistakes, to create homes, opportunities, and dignity for every person this company touches. The crowd applauded, some with tears. Afterwards, a young mother approached Layla, clutching her child's hand. Thank you, she said softly, for giving us a future. Layla smiled, feeling a warmth she hadn't known in years. As night fell, she walked home through the streets of New York, no longer as an outcast, but as a woman who had rewritten her legacy. She stopped at a small park bench, pulled out a worn photo of herself and her father as a child, and whispered, I'm making it right. The city buzzed around her, complex, imperfect, but alive. And so was she.